Welcome to week 5.
I hope you had a good week this week. We sure miss you guys, and can't wait to see you again. Hopefully it'll be soon.
3-day weekend from school, yay.
Yay.
Oh yeah, you get to stay home. It's kind of nice, right?
Yeah, hopefully the
So-
weather's good. You can get outside, ride your bikes, skateboards, whatever it is that you have.
So,
Okay, I'm gonna let Pop Back take over and do the lesson.
okay, well, another lesson this week. Outside of the books that we're going to be doing, hopefully, maybe we'll be back next week. So we'll find out. So this week, I kind of wanted to go over the book of Malachi. For those of you who don't know, it is the last book of the Old Testament. So don't know exactly when it was written. So roughly 450 to 400 BC, and yes, if the larger number is further back from in time, so because you're going backwards. So they know approximately when it is based on the references to the temple and the priests. So we know it was after the nation of Israel had returned from captivity. The temple had been rebuilt, the wall around Jerusalem had been rebuilt, and there had been some time after that. So that's approximately how they knew it when it was. We know that after they returned captivity, they got kind of lazy, and the prophet Haggai and Zechariah came and they finished the temple. Mama Ac's hair is getting in her face, so she's blowing. So if you hear strange noises, but then the people kind of got lazy again. So it wasn't that they necessarily weren't in the synagogues or the churches of their time, but that they just got lazy. And not only were the people lazy, but the priests were lazy. So kind of going through the book, it's fairly short. It's 4 chapters, similar to what we studied this week in Ruth. If you were listening to the revival all week, so it is a relatively short book, but it's got a lot packed into it. In chapter 1, verses 1 and 2, God declares His love for Israel. So, I have loved you, saith the Lord. Yet ye say, wherein has thee loved us? Was not Esau Jacob's brother? Saith the Lord, yet I love Jacob. So he declares his love, and then he declares his hatred for Esau and the nation that formed out of that in verses 3 through 5. So you can read the whole book. You should read the whole book. It doesn't take very long. It's probably 15 to 20 minutes to read. So then in chapter 1, verse 6 through 14, he kind of gets after the unrepentant priests. Well, not kind of. So in verse 7, he says, ye offer polluted bread upon mine altar, and ye say, whereon have we polluted thee? In that ye say, the table of the Lord is contemptible. So, and it goes on. I mean, if you offer a blind sacrifice, is it not evil? They were to be offered. And if you offer the lame and the sick, is it not evil? What were the sacrifices to be? The sacrifices were to be a perfect sacrifice, the perfect lamb, right? As a representation of Jesus. And it's pretty easy to say, well, the perfect lamb, that's, why would I get rid of the perfect one? I've got this sick one or this lame one. It's really not worth much. If I offer that, who's going to know the difference? How does that apply to us today? If we show up to church and our heart's not in it, who's to know? We can't tell from the outside, right? But this was the priests, so we need to look at them. I mean, they are held to a higher standard even, right? So it continues through and just continues to go after the priests. And then in chapter 2, God has his punishment to the priests, and you can read through that. Because God gets after them. I mean, and our pastors and our leaders are to be held to a higher standard. And we are to know, and right now it's really easy for them not to be held to that standard because everybody's not meeting, so it's harder. But they need to be held to that standard. Then it gets into the sins of the people, right? In chapter 2, verse 10 through 12, he talks about spiritually mixed marriages, and the nation of Israel was told very clearly not to marry people from other nations because it would bring their gods into the land of Israel. And this is true throughout the history of Israel, that they continue to mix with those. And how does that apply today? I mean, there are some people who say, you're not supposed to be mixed races. I don't believe that's true. But I think the way it applies to us today is, for all of you, not to marry somebody who's not saved. So if you're out there dating, or you're talking to, looking at a relationship with somebody, that's what we're not supposed to be looking at, right? You are supposed to be dating and marrying someone who is saved. So he looks at that in verse 10 through 12. And next he talks about divorce. And ye have done, again, covering the altar of the Lord with tears and weeping and crying out, insomuch as regardeth not offering any more and receiving it with good will in your hand. Yet ye say, wherefore? Because the Lord has been a witness between thee and the wife of thy youth, against whom thou hast dealt treacherously, yet she, thy companion, the wife of thy covenant. So, very true in our land today, right? Divorce is almost a foregone conclusion when people get married. People just say I think the most common reason for divorce is irreconcilable differences. Did I say that right, Mamak? Say it.
Irreconcilable differences.
Irreconcilable differences. Basically saying we can't get along. Well, it's really easy to say we can't get along, right? It takes work to keep a marriage going, and as those of us who've been married for a while can say, it does take work, and the person that you are married to now is much different than the person that you married when you were in your early 20s. In my case, we've been married for almost 27 years, almost 28 years. Max giving me faces. But you've changed too. I guarantee it. You may not see the changes in yourself as much as your spouse, but it'd be easy to say, well, we just don't get along anymore. We want different things. We like different things. So I'm just going to dump, in my case, her or him, and find somebody new, somebody that wants to do what I want to do. And that's, if you don't work on your marriage and you don't pay attention, it's pretty easy to do. So it was true 2,500 years ago. It's true today, and it's probably been true all that time in between. So, but if people are in church, if you have God as the core of your marriage, then it will more likely to be to work. And if you marry somebody that's unsaved, then God can't be at the center of your marriage. So he goes over divorce in chapter 2, verse 13 through 16. Chapter 3. So now in chapter 3, he talks about Jesus coming, and John the Baptist. So, and behold, I will send a messenger, and he shall prepare a way for me, and the Lord whom ye seek shall suddenly come into his temple, even the messenger of the covenant whom ye delight in, behold, he shall come, saith the Lord of hosts. And I will abide the day of his coming, and who shall stand when he appeareth? For he is like a refiner's fire, and like a fuller's soap. So he's going to come. This is a foretelling of Jesus coming, and John the Baptist. John the Baptist was preaching of God and saying, he's a man cometh that I do not have the right to remove, loosen his sandals. This is 400 to 450 years before Jesus came, and this is the last prophet that's at least recorded in the Bible, and he's predicting John the Baptist, and Jesus is coming. Next, he gets in, and which is kind of a weird intermix, because he's talking about sin of marriage, sin of divorce, and then he goes into predicting Jesus is coming, prophesizing Jesus and John the Baptist. And then he goes back to the sins of the people and robbing God. And this, in the Old Testament, they were to be giving their tithes and offerings, and that continues. And they weren't obviously giving their tithes and offerings. He says, even from the days of your fathers, you're gone away from mine ordinances and have not kept them. Return unto me, and I will return unto you, saith the Lord of hosts. But ye said, wherein shall we return? That was in verse 7. In verse 8, will a man rob God? Yet ye rob me. Which ye say, wherein have we robbed thee? In thy tithes and offerings. Ye are cursed with a curse. Ye have robbed me, even of the whole nation. Bring all the tithes unto the storehouse, that there are many, maybe meat in mine house, and prove me, wherefore saith the Lord of hosts. And I will open unto you the windows of heaven, and pour out a blessing, that there shall be not room there enough to receive it. And this is still true today. And people will say, well, I give my tithe. Do you really give your tithe? I mean, do we look at it? I mean, some people will look at it and say, I give my tithe based on my net income. I give, which is after taxes and all that. Well, does the government come first, or does the Lord come first? And it should be the Lord that comes first. So we need to give our tithe. If we make, it's between us and the Lord, but if we make a faith promise giving for either missions or the building fund, stout against me, saith the Lord. in my Bible, I turn 3 pages, and Christ is returned, or Christ has come for the first time. It's 450 years. So for us, that would be roughly 1600, the late 1580s or something or so, 1570. That's a long time ago to us. It's eons ago, but in God's time, that's but a blink of an eye. So when we think about, Christ coming, we need to look back and trust the Bible, and it's true. And we have the patience of, we don't have the patience from the beginning of the year. We don't have the patience for this shutdown that's only been going on for 8 weeks, much less following God's word for hundreds of years without a different prophet coming and warning them. So